So for today's event, we will stop recording prior to our formal Q&A, but I think our speaker wants to engage with you during his presentation. So you do have the ability to unmute and speak. If you want to post a question through the chat too, that's fine. We plan to go till our advertised 1:45 break. Otherwise, I'm gonna pass the mic to John Turbeville, who's Director of Career Services here at ESF, to introduce our presenter today. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. We in Career Services are delighted to be partnering again this year with Kathy and the Open Academy on this session, which, as she said, is our second webinar in the Professionals in Sustainability series this semester. Today, I'm excited to introduce Michael Amadori. Michael is a 2012 MS grad from our Environmental Resources Engineering department. He currently works for Hobart William Smith College as their Assistant Director for Student Engagement and Sustainability. As a graduate student at ESF, Michael made his mark by founding Full Circle Feed, which produced environmentally sustainable dog treats. I actually ate one. They're human friendly too. It was part of his spiel. A special thank you to Michael for being with us today and for participating previously on an alumni entrepreneurship panel that we hosted in the Career Services office. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to Michael as he can begin our presentation for today.
Thanks, John and Kathy. I appreciate being here and having the opportunity to talk to some current students and hopefully offer some good advice to advance them along in their careers. So I'm just gonna share my screen here, right? Share this one. And is that looking good for you guys?
Yep.
Yes, as was said, my name is Michael. I use he, him pronouns, and I work at Hobart William Smith Colleges in Geneva, New York. Just a little background about myself. I was always kind of involved in the environment. I went to high school in Eden, which is a small town south of Buffalo. I was an Eagle Scout during my time as a high school student, and then I went on to get my bachelor degree in biological sciences from the University of Rochester. After that, I joined the AmeriCorps, and this is something that I really encourage all students to look into is the AmeriCorps. I had a very transformative experience, I feel like, in the AmeriCorps. Really got me out of a shell, I might want to say, and really exposed me to different things, required me to do different tasks. You know, I was always a good student with good grades and crushed high school, crushed college, but good grades and textbook knowledge is not always translatable to job skills. Certainly some of it is, definitely. Good grades are important. I would definitely encourage that. But there are certain skills you might get outside of that. And I would encourage you to look at the AmeriCorps. When you do, you could see a screen like this where it lists a variety of different topics and interests you might be involved with. And you could select, you know, the environment obviously would probably be one of them, but you can, once you get into the application, you can multiple select. So maybe you want to get into the environment from disaster relief, like firefighter, or like going into like areas where there was fires and helping rebuild communities, Habitat for Humanity. Maybe you want to get into the environment and tackle homelessness and, you know, food pantries and food shelters, things of that nature. So there's a variety of different ways in which you can maybe do the environment and do childhood education. So you're helping educate young children, middle schoolers about the importance of recycling in their community. So it's a really great program. You can go somewhere, anywhere in the world or anywhere in the country, rather the Peace Corps. So it's very similar to the Peace Corps, except instead of a 2-year commitment, you only have a 1-year commitment. And, you know, I grew up in upstate New York, as I just said, but I got to go out, live out west in Lake Tahoe, which is on the border of California and Nevada, and had, like I said, a really transformative experience. And if you ever have any questions about the AmeriCorps, I'm always happy to talk to current ESF students and help, you know, provide some guidance on their application and that choice. So after I finished that, I came back and applied to grad school. As was mentioned, I went to the Environmental Resources Engineering department, and my master's degree was in ecological engineering. For my thesis project, I was really always big kind of in waste and in food. That was always like 2 passions of mine. So what you see here is right in the old greenhouses, up kind of where the big Dawn redwood tree is near the cemetery. If you guys are familiar with the greenhouses over there. This is the aquaponic system I designed and constructed for my thesis project. There's 3 tanks on either side. And the experiment was, can I take food left from the university and use that as the feed and the only nutrient input in the aquaponic system instead of commercial fish feed? So 3 of the fish tanks were fed a commercial fish feed and 3 were fed a customized pellet that was made on campus. And just to clarify, what is aquaponics? It combines aquaculture, which is fish farming, with hydroponics. So in the bottom tanks, that's where the fish lived, and the water was constantly pumped up to the hydroponic system. And in that process, the bacteria in there converted the fish waste into plant nutrients. The plants pulled the nutrients, the nitrogen, out of the water to use for growth, and then the water returns to the fish tank cleaner. So I went to the Sadler dining hall right across the hall, right across from ESF, picked up the leftover food that you see right here in the pictures, went back into Baker, ground the food up, put it into the oven, and made these little pellets that were used as the fish feed. So it was a success, right? I took old food that was going to be composted. It wasn't going to be landfilled. We do compost, and so does Syracuse University. But instead of composting it, one step better is to feed animals with it. And that's exactly what I did. Took that food, fed some animals with it into the aquaponic system. There's a picture of some of the tilapia we grew. They were big, they were happy. And the idea being you could take any of that extra, any of the food that we're growing, the lettuce, the fish, feed it back to hungry freshmen on campus, and any scraps might still go back into the system, creating a closed loop system for food production and waste management right on a college campus. So I was able to be supported a little bit through the Sustainable Enterprise Partnership. I would encourage any students to look into this program. It helps provide funding for projects, ideas, and initiatives. It's a collaboration between the Whitman School Center of Excellence and SUNY ESF. And after I did my thesis, someone encouraged me, it might have been even Laura Crandall, who said, hey, you know, over at SU, they're doing this competition for starting businesses. Why don't you give an idea for a pitch? So I applied to this business pitch competition with no business knowledge whatsoever, but I was one of the winners. And so they gave me $10,000 to start a company, and I got enter into the Syracuse Student Sandbox, which is like a entrepreneurship crash course for, you know, all students to start a business. And the New York State Business Plan competition also provided some resources. So we made a few pivots from our initial idea. And as John alluded to, we now started taking food, and instead of from dining halls on college campus, I was getting the buffet from Turning Stone Casino. So instead of fish sticks, I was getting shrimp, and instead of hamburgers, I was getting steak. So a little bit higher quality food. But we were still taking that food, vegetables, meats, grinding it up, mixing with some flour, sheeting it, and we made little dog treats, doggy bag treats. And so this was the company that was all founded based off of my research at ESF. And I did this for about 5 years. We had a website, people could buy our treats right at our store, online, or I was in 25 local stores in the central New York area, as well as the Saturday Farmers Market, which I would highly encourage you guys to attend if you ever want to. If you haven't done that yet, you're missing out. Saturdays morning, down kind of by the mall, there's the regional market. It's a great place to meet local farmers, local vendors of all sorts of products. And yeah, so it was a great experience. The treats were human edible. I would encourage people to try them. I had a booth at the New York State Fair one time, and I was letting people eat the treats, and I had some hummus to dip it in, and they came over to me and they're like, you don't have a permit to serve people food. You can't be letting people eat your dog treats. So the fair was a little bit more strict than like the farmer's market. But yeah, so I did that for 5 years, 6 years after I graduated school. And it was a success, but there were, hiccups with starting the company. We were at a shared use production facility. So I had some of my own equipment, but was renting other equipment, and that whole facility was shutting down. And just looking at the cost of scaling up, it was just going to be pretty cost prohibitive. And so I decided to, after I had a great experience and made a little bit of money and saved a lot of food and fed a lot of dogs, to change my career course a little bit. So I was working as an adjunct instructor. I taught courses at ESF, at Lemoyne, Ryan and Stratton, and I was also working at the MOST, Museum of Science and Technology, doing some outreach and education for them as well, while still applying for full-time jobs. And that's where I found my current position at Hobart and William Smith College as the sustainability manager. So what is sustainability? So I'm kind of curious what I would just like to hear from some of the people on the call. If you don't mind unmuting yourself. If you have any ideas, what do you perceive to be sustainability, or have you ever heard about the pillars of sustainability? Is it just recycling? Is that sustainability?
Hi, my name's Shelby Harrison, and I'm really glad to be here. But from my current undergrad at Westminster College, I've learned a lot about sustainability, and I believe what sustainability is essentially doing things in a certain process to where you are conserving resources for essentially the future.
Yeah, that's like I believe what they officially, I remember sustainability was always somewhat of an abstract definition. And I forget what organization made the definition, but I was right. Meeting the needs of the current generation without compromising the needs of the future generations to meet their own needs. And right, that's exactly right. Thank you, Shelby, for chiming in there. And it could also be considered, I like to use the 3 Ps, right? So the 3 Ps of what sustainability can be considered: people, planet, and profit. So a lot of times people think sustainability and they think recycling, they think solar panels, and that's planet, and that's absolutely true. But there's more than just that. There's people. That's social justice. That is a huge component for sustainability. There's environmental protection, and there's economic equality. All 3 of these things are needed for anything to be sustainable. If ESF says, you know what, we're going to cut the tuition in half to make the people who go to our school happy. We're going to give everyone huge raises to make the employees happy. We're going to put a giant geothermal system in the center of the quad to heat our campus instead of using natural gas for the planet. And they do all these initiatives and they go bankrupt because of them. Well, then they can't be sustainable. The institution cannot sustain itself into the future. So I would say, profit is a part that sometimes people don't always associate with sustainability, or sometimes can be considered the enemy of sustainability. And it can be somewhat true when a big corporation is considering nothing but profit at the sake of forcing people to pay minimum wage and destroying the environment. And that's true when they're only putting profit above all else. It's a triple bottom line is another terminology. And you need to be profitable, you need to have a healthy planet, and you need to have healthy people. And so I always like to keep that in mind, for students to keep that in mind when they look and consider careers in sustainability. It's not just about, going after the man and the corporate enemy, but kind of morphing the system that we currently live in so our current system can be sustainable for future generations. And that's just, how I've always kind of looked at it. And it wasn't always how I looked at it, but it's how I've kind of learned to perceive it and interpret it. And that's great. So what do I do here at school? So I do a lot of things related to sustainability. Some of the things related to like the planet would be like energy. So if you're really into energy, we do have a solar farm on campus. So I monitor our solar farm production. There's what's called a REC, or renewable energy credit. If you want to get into any energy positions, understanding RECs and carbon offsets are going to be critical. So that's part of my role, is monitoring the solar farms, this energy generation. Then we generate RECs, and then they are what's called retired on our behalf. So that means we get to claim the solar benefit from the solar farm, and that says we can power our campus. All of the electricity on our campus is carbon free. Not all of it comes from the solar farm. We also have to buy wind RECs, which are just RECs that a wind farm generated. We purchase those, and then we say now we are powered by the wind energy as well. So that's a big part. And then there's also projects we do on campus related to energy, like de-lamping. Actually, last time I was in Moon, maybe 2 years ago, a de-lamping project I did in grad school was still around. So if you look in Moon, there's 2 lights in every ballast. Well, we removed one of the light bulbs, and we still had plenty of light in Moon, But at the same time, we were able to cut the electrical consumption in half. And I've taken that same project and done it to a few buildings here on campus. We put stickers on light switches to encourage people to turn off their lights when they leave the room, turn off projectors, turn off the air conditioner, turn off TVs. I encourage everyone to turn things off on campus all the time. And I would encourage you to do it on your campus as well. And sometimes I like to remind people, right, why do I want to go back upstairs? I left the lights on in my room. I have to walk up 2 flights of stairs. What difference does it make? Well, you got to understand that it's not just you doing that as a solo effort. You're not going upstairs to turn off 2 lights, or you are, but there's also hundreds, if not thousands of people taking that same initiative, and that collective group of effort is making a big difference. So don't ever think that one little action is not making a difference in the larger scheme of things. Water. So the big thing with water right now is we're putting water refill stations on our campus, or more of them, where it comes out with filtered tap water. I mean, we have great water here and in Syracuse too, but the tap water can sometimes be a little chlorinated. So we're putting these filtration stations on. We're looking at also at like green infrastructure and stormwater management. Waste management is the big one. We have composting on campus. So I work with the compost hauler to develop, set scheduling pickup times. We're getting more compost pickup locations on campus. We have this program where people can sign out buckets like this, and then we have totes scattered throughout campus. They can put this in their room or in their house that they live in. Bring it to one of the totes. Water there. Bring over one of the totes on campus, and then that is composted at a local facility. Food and agriculture. Trying to encourage our dining services to buy local. That's a big one. We sponsor a local farmers market on campus every year. So I run that. I reach out to local farmers, bring them to campus right in our student center. They set up tables, sell their products. Everyone from campus can come buy stuff. So it's kind of networking with the local community. Biodiversity and habitat creation. So right, it's sustainability is broad, especially in this role. Not all sustainable roles are as broad, right? Renewable energy credits from a solar farm is very different from putting pollinator patches with native flowers on campus, but they're both different initiatives that we do here on campus. So we have eliminated areas of just grass, which is beneficial to no one. I did find out eastern bluebirds, our native New York State birds, does actually like golf course like grass for habitat for eating, which I was surprised to find out. But we have plenty of it at Hobart William Smith. So we can certainly take some of that grass, get rid of it, and turn it into pollinator patches. Green infrastructure, I mentioned. Social justice, that's another thing that we do. So we have a community lunch program where I work with another office on our campus to recruit volunteers to help work at the food shelter on campus to serve lunch. We capture food from our dining hall and donate it to the food bank. We work with our day of service, and I know ESF has a day of service too, to kind of get out there in the community and help those who are less fortunate. A lot of this is accomplished through student and campus engagement. So 2 big events that we run through my office is Earth Week and Food Week. So Earth Week is in the spring and Food Week just happened actually. And you can kind of see some of the different things we do here. A lot of the events during these 2 weeks correspond to some of the same topics that we just addressed. You can see like there's a bird feeder event where you make bird feeders for campus, wildflower planting. We do like our dining hall, we'll do Meatless Monday. We have our local dinner in the dining hall as well, where they buy food all from local farmers and serve it. So we do a whole bunch of different events. With COVID, our farmers market turned virtual. So that's not as successful because I don't know, people like to look and buy this produce when they see it, but it still gets businesses and helps support the local farmers. So yeah, so that's just kind of a little overview of what I do here, and I'm hopeful that you'll have some more questions and want to learn more about it, and I'm happy to take those towards the end of the presentation. I want to turn a little bit into what I learned at ESF and some skills that I learned as a student that I've been able to find very useful here at school in my current position. So I first broken into tangible skills. So what is that? Microsoft Office, for instance. You should be able to use Excel very good and know how to drag formulas down, drag formulas across, use all the basic functions of Microsoft Excel, organize data, data management, build graphs, build charts that are easy to understand, colorful, understand how they operate. Those are very important skills. Format Painter, if you're not familiar with the Format Painter tool on Microsoft Office, it's useful. I think it's only in PowerPoint and in Word. You need to learn it. It is life-changing. Instead of having to change your text and the font size and the colors to match everything, you can just click and then paint the same format all over the document. It's very, very helpful. Building a table of contents, if you want to make a good long document that's 20 pages long, your table of contents should not be you writing it out, then holding the period button until it goes across and then writing the page number. That's, you should learn how to build a proper table of contents. It will auto-generate it using the headings tool within Microsoft Office. So I really encourage you to spend some time. Online tutorials are great. Data analysis and organization, there's a lot of, and that's, it's kind of mostly done in Excel, but really just being organized and understanding how you're organizing things. So many different ways to skin a cat, they say, right? I think that's the term. It seems kind of weird to say that now, but it's true. You can organize and present the same data in different ways, and it's very important to have good skills with that so you can present that to people. Economic analysis, I would encourage you guys to definitely take at least one economics course, understanding payback period, return on investment, interest rates. These are not only skills you'll need in a job, but for your own life. You're going to have a house with a mortgage, understanding how interest rates impact that, student loans. I remember I took engineering decision analysis, and I was able to calculate within like 2 cents what my student loan payment is using the formulas that we were using in class. So it's like very useful skills to have, both in your career and in your personal life. And then if you're really more interested in energy, like I said, understanding energy markets, renewable energy credits, carbon offsets, utilities, how the utility works. It's a regulated monopoly, how that factors in the delivery of electricity versus your supply of electricity. Those are very different things and are controlled by different entities. Plant species and identification, take dendrology. That's a great course to learn not only just trees, but wildflowers, birds, animals, all of that good stuff. You should understand that. Composting, right? It's not just putting a bunch of stuff in a pile and hopefully compost, right? It's adding the correct ratio of nitrogen to carbon. There's different types of composting, right? There's static, aerated piles. There's vermicomposting, which is where worms eat the food. I have a 15-year-old vermicompost system in my basement. I've had it since I was in grad school, actually. I went to, me and some other students went to like this urban farm in Milwaukee, and I bought a 5-gallon bucket of dirt and worms, and I've been composting with them, and they just reproduce and then die and then reproduce right in the same system. And for 15 years, I have never thrown out any vegetables or fruit scraps for my personal food waste generation. But understanding like the logistics and what it takes to collect the food, store the food, compost the food, these are all skills that you can learn on campus and very tangible. Intangible skills. So I like this sentence. It's right from one of my cover letters, and it's talking about, understanding how many different stakeholders there are in any environment, not just a university environment, in the corporate world. There's going to be different people with different agendas. And if you want to create change, you have to sometimes be realistic. I'm working with a student now on a divestment campaign. She is gung-ho. She wants HWS to divest, right? Get all of our money out of fossil fuels. And it's like, that might not happen right away or if ever, but we can take incremental steps to get there and try to understand, all right, because there's the board of trustees, there's the student government, there's the CFO and the financial people at the institution. They're all different stakeholders. And, maybe we can first start with a disclosure of our investments and the formation of a governance board and the board of trustees that simply examines the institutional endowment holdings and evaluates if any are sustainable, right? That's the first step, right? Instead of just demanding divestment, right? The end goal might be that there, but you got to take these incremental steps and you got to give a little to take a little. And it's very much a give and flow. And doing getting out there and trying to get on college and make projects happen, you develop these intangible skills. I wouldn't say the AmeriCorps is where I developed a lot of these intangible skills, especially within the event planning and volunteer management. Volunteer management is tricky. You can't just have an event with volunteers to show up and expect it to go seamless. You need to have tasks ready to go, all the tools you need. And I learned that the hard way when I was in the AmeriCorps. I had this event, all these people showed up, and I was way in over my head. I was not prepared. I didn't have gloves for the people that were supposed to be sorting food. There was some people who were done with their task way too soon. And so then they had nothing to do. And volunteers don't want to just stand around doing nothing. So really, volunteer management is an important skill to develop. And by participating in events as a volunteer, observing the people who are managing the event and what they're doing and how they're doing it is a way to learn and kind of develop these skills. And problem solving. I always remember, common grief or complaint. It's like, oh, the professor doesn't tell us, anything. They just say, do this, and they don't provide the proper instruction. And that problem solving, right, here's an end goal, figure it out yourselves, is how the job market works and how things work in a career, right? In school, it's just like, oh, this is how you do it. And here's a problem, just like it, do it, right? And that's certainly good to have. But problem solving where it's just like, here's an end goal, figure it out, is a very good thing to learn and to navigate and just kind of trying things out. Some are going to work, some are not going to work, and figuring out for yourself and developing those problem solving skills are really important. And understanding, I think when faculty members say, here's a project without giving every little detail, it's because they want that struggle, that frustration is you need to channel that into like understanding that, okay, because this is how the world is. I have something I need to do. There's no one to tell me how to do it. It's like, I need to figure it out on my own. And those are skills you can build at school. So kind of ending here on a job search. You guys are probably going to be hopefully getting jobs soon. If you're seniors and juniors, I would encourage you to be flexible to what types of jobs you're applying for and the companies. So I did a little research before I hopped on here. And look at this position. It's for Harley Davidson, right? You would not think you're going to go to ESF, study sustainability, and get a job at Harley Davidson. But there are careers out there that are in companies you wouldn't expect and careers you wouldn't expect that need sustainability and environmental professionals. So here's one. This is another one for Herscher Trust. If you look right there, they have a portfolio of hotels. So looking at how hotels are and looking at the environmental and I love social initiatives. I love that because that's truly sustainability, right? It's not just recycling and waste management at the hotels and energy management and renewable energy at the hotels, although that's part of it. It's a social justice component and social initiatives at the hotels. There's, this position out here is definitely more focused on waste and recycling. So everyone's going to have different passions. Like I said, I was always a big waste guy, more so than I was energy. But, not everyone's the same. So looking at all these different positions, here's a commodity analysis. This is real energy. Like I said, the renewable energy credits, those are the RECs, carbon offsets. This is an education-based position. So outreach and education of sustainability. That's a whole career field just in that, where you're just going out there and doing outreach and education to middle schools, to senior citizens homes, and everyone in between. So there's a lot. So be flexible. And when you're doing your job searches, when you're looking at different careers, to understand, there's a lot of things out there that you might not have realized that environmental and sustainability experts are needed. Be diligent in your job search. So they say applying for a job is a full-time job, right? You can't just like send a look up for an hour or two each day. You got to spend hours looking for those positions, hours, because you got to find the right match for yourself. And they're not always going to be on the first page of Google. You really got to dig deep. Look at different, LinkedIn, Indeed, Monster. There's all sorts of different ways to look for jobs, and you have to spend a lot of time looking for them. And you have to spend a lot of time, once you find a job you want to really do your research on what is this company, what is this position, who would my manager be, and really put that into your cover letter, put that into your resume. And it takes time. You can't just see a job, click, and apply and think you're going to get hired. That's not how it works. After you do apply, follow up, make sure you're sending an email or a phone call the week after. Say, hey, I applied. I'm just wondering the status, when they're going to be doing interviews, when the job search closes, things of that nature. If you get an interview, send a thank you email. People say, I'm never really good at people's names. No one's good at names. It's a conscious effort that some people make to remember names. So when you're on the interview, you're going around the table, you really want to think like, okay, That's Brandon. That's Kristen. That's Chad. These are people I work with now that were at my job interview. And I had to put a conscious effort in there. So then when you can follow up with personalized emails, when you're in the end of the interview, you say their name, people remember that. They like it when you remember their name. And it takes effort. It's a skill that you have to work on. And as I mentioned before, you have to customize every resume and cover letter. I definitely have a master CV and resume, and it's like 5 pages long. And there's all these different things. Like I said, if I did stuff more related to outreach and education, stuff more to energy. And when I apply to a job, I take sections of that and I put that in my 1-page resume. So it's customized to each position that I apply for and cover letter. This is what it looks like. This is when I was applying for jobs. You can see every one of these is a resume for all these different jobs I was applying for before I got my job at Hobart and William Smith. Each one is different. Each one is customized for the particular position that I was applying for. So it's important to remember that there's going to be a lot of overlap. It might be 50 to 60, 70% the same in both, but that, 30 to 50% difference is what separates you. People can tell when you're applying for jobs, or when you're receiving job applications, rather, you can immediately see who's just sending the same application to everyone and who spent the time to understand my company, my position, and what I'm looking for when I'm looking for an applicant. So, a few last things to close here. How to best position yourself. Be involved, right? Campus events, clubs, and other opportunities, volunteering opportunities in the community and networking with professionals. That is very important. Like I said, it's important to get good grades too, but getting involved makes a difference. And with kind of where you want to envision getting your career headed, right? If you're really big in energy, get involved more with energy stuff. You can't just rely on your classwork to get you there. You have to put that extra initiative in, join clubs, and be involved. Never stop learning, right? As I mentioned, sustainability is a very diverse field. Don't ever be, humble and hungry, right? Don't ever think, from my perspective, there's a first-year student who's 18. I shouldn't think that I know everything when we're at the garden, like, oh, I'm going to teach this 18-year-old about gardening, because I had a student come up and pick this plant that I thought was a weed and start eating it. Like, oh, this is sorrel. You can eat this. And so you never know who's going to teach you. So you got to stay humble. Don't think you know it all. Don't think you're the expert in everything, and stay hungry to learn, ask questions. Try to, get as much out of anyone as you can. So, it's a lifelong learner is a very important thing. So if you do want to get involved with sustainability, specifically in higher education, I have a list of a few organizations that you might want to be aware of. So the first one's ASHE. This is the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. That's the big one. And ASHE runs the STARS report. And the STARS report is kind of like a benchmarking tool that the colleges use to track their sustainability initiatives and how they compare to their peers. So it's great because it covers so much. Like I said, every part of sustainability is covered in the STARS report, or most parts of sustainability are covered in the STARS report. So you can easily Google these things, and then you can start reading. You can read the ESF STARS report. Just Google ASHE STARS ESF, and you'll see a link. And you can see the most recent ESF STARS report and seeing what's going on campus. Excuse me. Then there's NICSHE, which is specifically the New York Coalition for Sustainability in Higher Education. So it's kind of like the higher education schools that are just more New York focused. There's a listserv that we're all a part of that people send a little bit more specific, right? New York has different rules than, Texas, than Wisconsin. So it's nice to be able to talk to your fellow peers within your geographic region. Second Nature, they track your carbon neutrality claims for higher ed. So it used to be called, what was it? It was the American College and University President's Climate Commitment. It was this big thing that was in 2007 where all these colleges signed up to be carbon neutral with, by 2030, 2050, they set their own dates. And that whole organization morphed to this new organization called Second Nature. And they have really streamlined and standardized the process for declaring carbon neutrality. What counts as an emission? And it's interesting because when you're counting your carbon emissions, food is not one of them. And, so an institution that buys a lot of meat versus one that doesn't makes no difference. Food is not considered in carbon emissions. from a higher education institution, which I always found that to be interesting. But you have to track like commuting from your employees. You have to track like HWS is one of the top study abroad schools in the country. Every time a student flies to London and back, we have to track those emissions. So it's things that are, maybe those are a little unconventional when you're thinking of carbon emissions. And then there's, of course, your emissions from burning electricity or burning natural gas on campus, consuming electricity on campus. There's NISAR. So that's the New York State Association for Reduce, Reuse, and Recycling. The Tree Campus and B Campus USA. Those are both, again, certification organizations. Tree Campus is run through the Arbor Day Foundation. B Campus is run through the Zuri Society. So they're just different organizations that are involved with things. PLAN is the Post Landfill Action Network. That's really cool because that was started by students and is mainly still very student focused in the stuff that they do. Whereas like they try to reach out to students to put the pressure on the higher education administrators to make change. Food Recovery Network. That's what we're using here at school to take extra meals from our dining hall and to donate them to the local food shelters. So every one of these organizations will have like student memberships, student only events, student only sub-organizations and clubs. So I really, you got to get involved, look into these places, get involved. I'd be happy to share ways to get involved if anyone's curious about it. But this is really how you start to network and build these affiliations and understand what's going on in the realm. And this is certainly a little bit more focused on higher education, a lot of these organizations versus there's other organizations out there that are just general sustainability. There's green drinks in Syracuse. If you're 21, there's like a group of professionals who meet at a local bar and have drinks and talk about being green in central New York. There's the AWMA. I got involved in that as a grad student. I'm still involved. That's the Air and Waste Management Association of Central New York. I'm still a member of it, and we're always trying to get students more involved. Doug Daly, who was my advisor at school, he got me involved. That's a real focus on air and waste management. That's a little bit more focused also on the regulatory side, which I didn't even touch regulations really since I started this talk. But that organization is, so if you're really more focused on, all right, well, what are the regulations for air pollutants, waste being both like solid waste, wastewater, speedies, which is like a solid, speedies permits is like a permit for discharging into waterways. So the AWMA is a great organization for that. And there's a host more. So just looking them up, going to their events. And like I said, professional organizations like that love it when students come to their event, and they will definitely engage with you and try to, talk with you. And that's how, get internships. And then once you get an internship, you got your foot in the door for when a position opens up. So, so that's my advice. And thank you for listening. Sorry, I tend to talk a little fast, so I apologize if I was rushing through there, but I would hope you would have some questions, and I'm happy to answer them.